So Dora, thank you so much for talking with me. This is so kind of you to take your time out. I'm very grateful, as I've said. And I feel like your testimony is a really important one right now, especially for women here in the UK, because you had your abortion, which we'll hear about in a second, via pill form. And the government have just given the okay for women because of COVID-19 to have abortions at home, which means that the suppliers will be sending out the abortion pills by post. And so women will be experiencing what you went through, very similar to at home. So before we get into the detail of that, tell me a bit about yourself, your background, and where you're at now.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me, Esther. I'm very excited. But yes, my name is Dora Esparza. So I'm from San Antonio, Texas, in the United States. I grew up with a Mexican American heritage background. So yeah, I grew up in a household, very kind of troublesome childhood. I did grow up being sexually abused for many years, for about 12 years. And so that really got me on the wrong path to begin with. So at an early age, probably around the age of like 12, I started heavily drinking and started getting into drugs. And so that led to pretty much what I believe was my journey towards the choice of having an abortion. After a really hard time of what I went through after that choice and many others, I found the Lord, and He turned my life around. I'm sober now. I'm clean. I'm married. I have 2 little boys, a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old. And now I just share my testimony as much as I can in hopes to help men and women to not make the mistake that I did.
I'm so sorry you went through that, Dora. That is, I can't pretend to imagine, but I can certainly hear the pain that you've been through and the regrets that you seem to be having now. So going back to the abortion, what was the situation? How old were you? How did it happen, kind of thing?
So I was 19. I was dating a guy that I was, to be honest, very obsessed with. And so we were dating probably about 6 months when I found out I was pregnant. Right. And so in January of 2009, I found out I was pregnant. And in March of 2009, I had the abortion. When I found out I was pregnant, I told him, I called him over to my apartment, my boyfriend at the time. And when I told him that I was expecting, I asked him how we were going to tell our parents, because at this point, abortion wasn't even an option for me. And he basically responded with that there's more, or there are other choices. Yeah. And so he didn't even have to tell me what choices, because I knew exactly what he meant. And that was very disappointing. I was very discouraged and very sad to hear that response. So I told him I didn't know right away what decision I would decide to make. And I told him I would think about it. So later on that evening, we decided to go back to his apartment so that just because I didn't want to be alone. Yeah. And he lived with a roommate, and he had 2 other friends over. So for the remaining of that evening, we decided to tell the guys that I was pregnant. And so we spent that evening pretty much in a room of 4 guys telling me that my only option was to abort, that I was too young to have a kid, that I wasn't going to be financially able to provide for a child. I was in school, so they were saying, you're going to have to drop out of school. So that was really what kind of pushed me to decide to follow through with an abortion, was the fear and the pressure. And I'm not alone on that, because statistics show that like 74% of women are pressured to have an abortion. Yeah. So it's a staggering rate of women. And so that just dismantles kind of like the women's choice, because really in most cases it's not. And so when we decided to have the abortion, my boyfriend made the appointment at a Planned Parenthood. And I went to my appointment, and he didn't go with me because he was working and was unable. And so I went by myself, and they did a sonogram, and they told me that I was 8 weeks pregnant. And so they told me that the best option for me was doing a abortion pill. And they told me that I could do it in the comfort of my home, and that, it was very private, that it wouldn't be anything more than just mild cramping, like a menstrual period. And so I was supposed to take the first dose there, and I did. So that first dose cuts off the nutrients of the baby.
Right.
They don't tell you this, but this is what I've come to know years later as I'm studying this. And then as soon as I took it, I was overwhelmed with immediate regret. It was just kind of like, why am I doing this? And I just started crying, and I looked at the nurse and I said, I don't want to go through this anymore. Is it too late? And she told me, she looked at me straight in the eye, and she told me, if you proceed to have this, go through with this pregnancy, your baby is going to be highly disabled. And so at that point, fear kicked in again.
Yeah.
I thought to myself, how could I live with myself seeing my child with a disability and knowing that I was the one to cause it? And so I decided, because I thought then that the most loving thing would do was to continue. Looking back now, like, I would much rather have a disabled child. I took the other set of pills with me to my boyfriend's apartment. And it was later that afternoon. You had to wait, like, I think mine was about 8 to 12 hours later.
Right.
We had to take the second dose, which the second dose was to actually begin to expel. And so I remember sitting in my boyfriend's apartment, and his friends, the same friends that were convincing me to abort, were sitting around me watching TV. And they're just, having a good time. And I'm just sitting there, like, completely numb and already, like, falling into depression of just, like, what I'm about to do, like, or what I've already done, to be honest. And so I took the second dose of pills, and almost immediately I started feeling like mild cramps. But then within 15 to 20 minutes, it began to be like severe cramps. Enough for me to have to go to the bathroom because it was just too much to have to bear in front of other people. I can't tell you how long I was in there. If I had to guess, it was probably like an hour, but it was just, I was blacking in and out. It was just very painful. Now that I have 2 sons, I realized that the pain I was going through were full contractions. So it was like your body's being forced to birth your baby prematurely. And so you're going through all the labor pains, and this was not explained to me. I didn't know that this was going to happen. So I thought I was going to die. There was a lot of blood. There was a lot of clots. There was, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Unplanned.
Yeah, I was going to mention that, actually. I was going to ask, is that an exaggeration? Is that accurate, a representation of what you went through?
Yeah, so exactly what you asked me, I've had a lot of my close friends ask me after watching the movie. Because, a lot of people assume that movies are exaggerated, but this one wasn't. This one, I literally was having flashbacks of what I lived through watching the movie, because that was exactly what I lived through. That was, the pain that she was going through, what she saw, the amount of blood, the way that she was in fetal position and just like on the floor thinking she was going to die. It was like that. And at one point it was so painful. I had to grab like the hand towel and just like bite on it and to keep from screaming, because it was just so painful. At the end of all of that, like within like probably like an hour after, I got up and there was blood like kind of everywhere on the floor once I got up, and I, was cleaning up. I was so embarrassed. I was cleaning it up. And as soon as I like walked out of the bathroom, I was pretty much at point of fainting. And my boyfriend at the time got me and he walked me to the bed and laid me down. And that's pretty much all I remember. Everything else for the next 2 days was a blur because I was heavily medicated. And I didn't do anything but sleep. I didn't eat. I didn't shower. Then it was 2 weeks. So 2 weeks after that, I had my checkup. only because my boyfriend told me that I should go to the checkup. I went because God knows, like, I wanted nothing to do with the clinic. I didn't want to go back. Like, it was just, I didn't want to ever think about it, but he convinced me to go. And so I went again by myself. And when I got there, they checked me and they told me that the pill was unsuccessful. And so they said that there was quite a few parts of my baby still in me, and that I would have to go to an emergency D&C. And had I not gone to my checkup, I would have died because of several blood clots. So they immediately started prepping me to go to an emergency D&C, which I don't know if you know what a D&C is, but it's pretty much, I'm going to get a little graphic here
Yeah,
because
sure. Absolutely.
we need to understand what it is. So it's pretty much a probe, like a vacuum, but it's, and Abby Johnson from Unplanned, she explains it very well, but because she worked there, but it has a pointed end to it, and it's like basically a section, and they don't use the guide of a sonogram or an ultrasound or anything to do this. They just guess that they're doing it correctly. And so what they do is they turn it up, they turn on the section, and they just pretty much scrape the uterus and the inner lining of the woman until they think they've collected everything.
Right.
And they measure that by the blood that they collect. And so a lot of women have been punctured, a lot of women have been scarred. In my case, I ended up having severe scarring that ended up in endometriosis, including ovarian cysts, and many other things that I had to deal with after. Everything was bad after that. I was in nursing school. I dropped out of nursing school. I lost like 15 pounds in like 2 weeks. I didn't shower. I didn't eat. I didn't do anything but just smoke weed to escape and just lay in bed. And I remember one night I was ready to just end it all. The pain was just too much. And I began to write out my suicide letter, my goodbye letter. And when I got to writing the letter to my mom, it was kind of like one of those moments where God reminded me that how much I loved her and how much she loved me. And being as miserable as I was for the loss of my child because of what I had done, I realized the pain that she would feel if I was gone. Yeah, in that moment, it was like God opened my eyes to realize, like I can't put her through that. And so that was really the only reason why I didn't go through with my suicide. It was just a good 6 years of just getting drunk 3 to 4 times a week, getting high every day. I got high every day for 6 years, doing other drugs, cocaine, acid, ecstasy. I mean, I was just a lost cause. It was denial, but it wasn't until years after that I look back now and I'm like, wow, that was really the root of everything, along with the sexual abuse I experienced. But like, the thing with the sexual abuse is like, even though it was 12 years of sexual abuse, that I would have much rather have dealt with that pain than that one day of the abortion. Like it was that hard.
Gosh,
It's just,
that's powerful. Wow.
yeah. So it's different because as a victim of sexual abuse, you're a victim, right? So it's like with an abortion, you're not necessarily the victim. You're the one that causes, right? And I don't, and people always are taken back when I say this, but I consider myself a murderer for what I've done. As a woman who's had an abortion and now is pro-life, I, I get a lot of hate because it's like, there can be people in the pro-life side that absolutely hate any woman that's ever had an abortion, no matter where she's at. And then the pro-choice side, like, they kind of judge you in the sense of like, well, you had your choice and who are you to take it from us? And it's not that I want to take the choice from anyone. It's the fact that I want to inform people of what the truth is, because
Right.
I wouldn't wish this upon my worst enemy.
You're saying this, and right now in the UK, there's almost a kind of celebration of that we've made a massive step for women's reproductive rights, being able to have these abortion pills at home. But from what you're saying that you've been through, gosh, I can't think of anything worse for women to be going through behind closed doors right now. It just sounds absolutely horrific. What would it have taken for you to have not gone through that abortion?
Honestly, support,
Mm,
which I think is why pregnancy resource centers are so crucial, um, because you feel alone, and if you are being pressured to doing it, you feel like there's no one there by your side to say, you know what, like, I'm here for you,
mm,
and I'll help you, like, whether it's, most importantly, it's the man, it's the father of the baby. Statistics show that they make, I think it's like 90%, like, they're the final decision makers of the abortion is
yeah.
the father. Had I had his support, like, for sure, like, I would have had a baby. But because I didn't, maybe had I spoken to somebody that would have told me the truth the way I'm saying it, would have changed my mind. Had I seen somebody from a pregnancy resource center that said, you know what, don't worry, like, we'll help you with bills, we'll help you with finding a job, we'll help you with daycare, which is what they do, I probably wouldn't have gone through it. But I felt so alone and isolated. And that's
Mm.
really what drove me to do it. So support is, like, definitely what would have kept me from having an abortion.
And how long has it taken for you to have been able to talk about it, like you are now?
It really didn't happen until this past August. I went to a retreat called Rachel's Vineyard. And so, um, they use scriptures, and it's basically a retreat focused to help bring healing to women and men who have had an abortion. And it really changed my life. And I gave all the glory to the Lord, because it wasn't just the counseling, it was like that with God, and just had given my life to Him. That
Mm.
hand in hand was like a supernatural healing for me. And so that began the process. And then Rachel's Vineyard just, like, topped it off. The Lord is definitely helping me process and go further along my journey of healing. The more I share, the more I heal. When I'm able to help a woman choose life, like, it's a huge healing for me.
And your badge I've seen, do you wear that out? And if you do, what's the reaction that you get from women?
Yes. So going on 7 months ago, God put it on my heart to wear this pen. It was very vulnerable at first, but it's
I
been actually
bet.
very powerful. It's like one of those opportunities to be able to minister without saying any words.
Mm,
And I thought that it was going to cause issues, that people were going to try to, like, mob me on the streets or something. And it was really just the enemy trying to get me to not do it. Because when I did it, it probably 99% of any reactions I've gotten have been positive. So it really just gives me the opportunity to not only share of the healing programs, but of course, which is the most important thing to me, is to share the gospel and who Jesus is and what He can do in someone's life. So He's been very faithful, and I've just
mm.
been blown away by the reactions of it.
I'm amazed at that reaction because, yeah, I would have thought, gosh, that could, really kick off wearing that. But I think that's amazing. And there's no doubt that you are extremely brave, Dora. So I guess my final kind of questions would be, why do you think that um, people are pushing so hard for something like, home abortions now in the UK? Why do you think women have been trying to push for this when it sounds so traumatic and so painful?
I think we're so willing to accept it, and I accept the idea because people don't want to be held accountable. Um,
Mm,
they want to have they want to be able to have all the free sex. They want to be able to be, having sex as much as they want, unprotected, and not have to deal with an outcome of that.
mhm,
And a child, they are huge responsibilities. And so
mm,
it's kind of like you don't want to deal with that, but you still want to go about having sex. So it's so easy, and
mm,
unfortunately, I think it's been pushed more as a birth control
mm,
method than it has as, like, an ultimate, like, last resort. even
Yeah.
though I think it shouldn't even be any resort. It shouldn't even be plan Z, but it's not even that. I think the majority of it though is ignorance. People really don't understand or don't know the truth. And that's why movies like Unplanned have changed a lot of people's minds. That's why testimonies are so powerful, because people need to hear it. People need to understand what it is.
Thank you. And what would you say to someone that was, openly celebrating something like home abortions in front of you?
I would really ask them to consider, if they're so worried about the women, we'll take out like the biology and the scientific facts of when a life starts, which we know is conception. But let's take that out, let's take that out for a second. And if their prime focus is a woman and her right, then I would really want them and challenge them to look at the statistics to see how many women are pressured, how many women are coerced, like they're literally being threatened to have abortions, how many women deal with suicide attempts or drug abuse, alcohol abuse, all the consequences of a woman making this decision, because that's not talked about and that's
Mm.
not shared. And you see the glorification of one side, but really behind that is brokenness and is just devastation and darkness. And it's all good when you make the decision, but then as soon as you're left broken, it's like, okay, we're done with you. And nobody cares about them. And in fact, when you try to speak up, they try to silence you.